He heard her screams in the jungle and found an alien girl tied above the flames. The night was thick with heat and the smell of wet earth. Ryan moved slowly through the alien jungle, each step sinking into soft mud. His breathing was calm, but his eyes scanned everything. This mission was supposed to be simple. Follow a signal, confirm the location, and leave without being seen. But the jungle had other plans. Strange shapes moved in the shadows, and glowing insects floated in the air like tiny stars. The sound of dripping water echoed all around. Then it happened, a scream, high, sharp, filled with terror. It cut through the humid night like a blade. Ryan froze, every muscle tense. His training told him to stay on the mission path. His orders were clear: no contact, no interference. But that scream came again, and it was closer this time. It was not an animal sound, it was someone in pain. He adjusted the strap of his rifle and started moving toward it. Each step made the ground squish under his boots. Branches slapped against his arms, and the wet leaves clung to his clothes. He moved carefully, using the jungle for cover. The sound of drums began in the distance, slow at first, then faster. Ryan's heartbeat matched their rhythm. He crouched low, crawling forward until the thick plants gave way to a small clearing. Firelight flickered against the trees. The air smelled of smoke and burning wood. In the center of the clearing, he saw them, a group of tall, muscular aliens with skin like dark stone. They wore bone necklaces and carried spears tipped with jagged metal. They were dancing around a huge fire, chanting in a deep, guttural language, and above the flames was a wooden frame. Tied to it, struggling weakly, was a young alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her hair white and tangled. Her wrists and ankles were bound tightly with rope. The heat from the fire licked at her legs, and her face twisted with fear. Ryan's jaw clenched. He knew these were tribal hunters, and this was some kind of ritual. But to them, the girl wasn't a person. She was a sacrifice. The leader of the tribe stepped forward, his chest painted with strange symbols. He held a long spear decorated with feathers and skulls. He shouted something to the others, and they roared in response. Ryan's eyes locked on the girl. She scanned the shadows as if searching for something or someone. Then her eyes stopped on him, even in the flickering light. He saw the fear and the plea in her gaze. Her lips moved silently. One word: help. Ryan's grip tightened on his weapon. He could feel the heat from the fire, even from where he hid. His mind raced. There were too many of them to fight head-on, but every second he waited brought her closer to death. The chanting grew louder, the drums beating like a war cry. One of the warriors dipped a torch into the fire and raised it high. The girl jerked against her bonds, coughing from the smoke. Ryan's instincts took over. He slid his rifle from his shoulder and checked the magazine. The metal felt cold in his hands. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. If he made a move, there would be no going back. He scanned the camp. There were about 10 of them, maybe more, hidden in the shadows. The leader stepped closer to the girl, lifting his spear. Her eyes squeezed shut, tears rolling down her smoke-streaked cheeks. Ryan shifted his weight forward, ready to spring into action. The fire popped loudly, sending sparks into the air. One of the warriors turned his head, and Ryan ducked lower, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The girl's voice broke through the chants for a moment, a desperate cry that cracked in the middle. It was enough. Ryan's boots sank deeper into the mud as he leaned forward, his muscles coiled like a spring. He could feel the moment coming, the moment when either he would save her or watch her die. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of her burning ropes to his nose. It hit him harder than any order, harder than any fear. Somewhere far away, the jungle's night creatures cried out, but here, in this clearing, there was only the fire, the drums, and the sound of her heart racing toward its last beats. Ryan's finger slid toward the trigger. He didn't care about the mission anymore. He didn't care about orders. There was only one thought left in his mind. He was not going to let her die tonight. The fire's heat hit Ryan like a wall as he moved from the shadows. his boots silent in the soft mud. The chanting of the tribe covering the sound of his approach, he kept low, weaving between the thick tree roots and broken spears stuck in the ground like markers of past kills. The girl's eyes widened when she saw him getting closer, a flicker of hope fighting against the terror in her face. One of the warriors passed near him, carrying a bundle of dried leaves toward the fire. Ryan waited until the man turned away, then grabbed him by the collar, pulling him into the darkness. His arm locked around the alien's throat until the struggling stopped. Ryan lowered the body to the ground without a sound, his own breath steady despite the rush of adrenaline. Smoke swirled around the clearing as another torch was raised, the flames casting monstrous shadows across the dirt. Ryan's mind counted the warriors' movements: 4 near the fire, 3 on the outer circle, 2 with bows scanning the tree line. He had seconds to decide. The leader lifted his spear high, chanting louder, the others joining in. Ryan moved, darting forward between the shadows, his boots kicking up dirt. In a flash he was beside the frame, his knife out, sawing through the rope around the girl's wrists. The fibers burned his palm, but he didn't slow down. She gasped, her voice caught between disbelief and relief. The nearest warrior saw movement and shouted, the sound cutting through the ritual. Like a blade, the others turned, but Ryan's knife was already at the rope on her ankles. The frame rocked dangerously over the fire as she kicked free. He pulled her into his arms, the heat from the flames biting at his skin. A spear struck the ground inches from his feet. Another whistled past his ear. Ryan ran, ducking under a low branch, the girl clinging to him with surprising strength. Behind them, the leader roared, the thudding of feet chasing after them through the jungle. The night exploded with noise. War cries, snapping branches, the hiss of arrows cutting through the air. Ryan didn't stop, leaping over a fallen log and sliding down a muddy incline, his boots losing grip for a moment before he caught himself. The girl's breath was fast, against his neck, her body trembling with each step he took. They reached a narrow stream, the water dark and cold. Ryan waded through, his rifle still clutched in one hand, the girl shivering violently in his grip. The jungle on the other side was thicker, darker, almost swallowing them whole. He slowed for only a second, listening. The voices behind them were still coming, but further now, muffled by the trees. He looked down at her, her pale blue skin glistening with sweat, her wide eyes watching him with a strange mix of trust and fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead of words, she only pressed her forehead to his shoulder, as if trying to hide from the world. Ryan tightened his hold on her and pushed forward, deeper into the night, knowing that as long as the firelight faded behind them, they still had a chance, but also knowing the hunt had just begun. The jungle seemed alive with movement, every rustle of leaves and crack of twigs, a reminder that the hunters were still behind them. Ryan's boots sank into the wet ground, each step pulling at his strength. The girl clung to him without a sound now, her earlier gasps replaced by a tense, shallow breathing. She was light in his arms, but her trembling told him how close she had been to the flames. A sudden snap of branches ahead made him freeze. He crouched low, eyes scanning the dark undergrowth. The moonlight barely touched the ground through the thick canopy. Something shifted in the shadows, not the slow, cautious movement of an animal, but the quick dart of someone hiding. Ryan placed the girl gently against a tree trunk and motioned for her to stay low. Her eyes followed his hands, and though she didn't speak his language, she seemed to understand. He slipped forward, rifle raised, stepping around a thick wall of vines. 2 figures appeared, crouched with spears in hand, their eyes catching the faint glint of firelight from far behind. They hadn't seen him yet. Ryan stepped closer, the mud masking his footsteps. Then with a sudden lunge, he slammed the first one to the ground. The second swung his spear, but Ryan caught the shaft, twisting it until the alien dropped it. With a hiss of pain, a quick strike to the side of the head dropped him into the mud. He grabbed the girl again and pushed forward, his breath heavier now, the night sounds shifting, The distant drums were gone, replaced by the low howl of some unseen creature far away. They crossed a patch of tall grass, the blades brushing against his face, when an arrow suddenly whistled past and buried into a tree just ahead. Ryan dropped instantly, pulling the girl with him. The hunter's call echoed through the dark. There was no time to fight. He rolled into a shallow ditch, water soaking his clothes, and crawled until the thick ferns covered them completely. The girl's chest rose and fell fast, her eyes darting to the glowing lights of fireflies drifting above them. He could feel her hand clutching his arm tightly. The hunters passed by, their footsteps heavy, their guttural voices arguing in short bursts. Ryan waited until the sounds faded into the distance before moving again. The girl gave him a questioning look, as if wondering why he was helping her at all. But he didn't answer, partly because he didn't know himself, and partly because every second mattered. Somewhere ahead, he could hear water running, maybe a river, maybe a way to lose their scent. He adjusted his grip on her and kept moving toward it, the vines closing behind them like the jungle itself was hiding their path. But in his gut, he knew this was only buying them time, not safety. Rain began to fall without warning, heavy drops, striking the broad jungle leaves and rolling down in streams. The sound masked their movements, but it also made the ground slick and treacherous. Ryan's boots slipped on a moss-covered root, forcing him to steady himself before he went down with the girl in his arms. Her pale blue skin was clammy now, her eyes half-lidded, the exhaustion from heat, smoke, and fear pulling her under. He spotted a narrow rock formation ahead, half hidden by vines and ferns. It wasn't much, but it offered some shelter from the rain. Ryan ducked inside, the space just large enough for the two of them to crouch. The girl's breathing came in short, uneven bursts. He shrugged off his soaked jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, the fabric hanging awkwardly on her smaller frame. She watched him closely, as if trying to read his face. Her gaze kept darting to the rifle slung across his chest, then back to his eyes. She spoke a word in her own language, soft and uncertain. He didn't understand, but the way she said it felt like a question. He shook his head gently, letting her know he meant no harm. From a small pouch tied to her waist, she pulled out a glowing shard, faint light pulsing inside it like a heartbeat. She hesitated, then pressed it into his palm. His fingers closed around it automatically. The warmth of it, surprising him. He didn't know what it was, but her expression told him it mattered. Outside, faint voices drifted through the rain. The hunters were still close, their shapes barely visible between the curtain of wet leaves. Ryan held his breath, his finger brushing the trigger as his eyes tracked every shadow. The girl's hand lightly touched his arm, not in fear, but in a silent plea for patience. The voices faded, swallowed by the storm. Ryan waited a moment longer before relaxing his grip on the rifle. Water dripped steadily from the rock above, each drop echoing in the small shelter. The girl's head slowly tilted against his shoulder, her trembling easing just a little. Ryan stared into the darkness beyond the vines, every instinct telling him this was only a pause, not an escape. But for now, with the rain hiding their scent and the jungle holding its breath, they had bought themselves a fragile moment of safety. Morning broke with a pale, misty light filtering through the dripping canopy. The jungle smelled of wet earth and crushed leaves. Ryan's muscles ached from holding still all night, but the girl was still curled against him, breathing softly. He gave her a gentle shake, and her eyes fluttered open, confusion mixing with the memory of what had happened. They moved slowly through the undergrowth, every step cautious. The rain from last night had left the ground soft, and their footprints sank deep. Ryan tried to brush away their trail with a branch as they went, but the jungle was too dense to move quickly. The sound of rushing water grew louder. They reached a shallow river with a thin layer of mist clinging to its surface. Ryan waded in, the cold biting through his boots. Halfway across, he felt the girl stiffen in his arms, her gaze fixed on the opposite bank. Figures emerged from the fog, not the painted tribal hunters from before, but tall, armored soldiers with sleek weapons and glowing visors. Their movements were precise, disciplined, and they moved straight toward the riverbank. Ryan stopped midstream, shifting the girl's weight so he could free one hand for his rifle. Her reaction was instant. She spoke rapidly in her own language, her voice sharp with fear. Ryan couldn't understand the words, but the way she clung tighter told him these were not rescuers. The lead soldier pointed at him, then at her, making a clear order to hand her over. Ryan shook his head, and the man raised his weapon. The girl's breath hitched, her eyes locking with Ryan's as if to say, "Don't let go." The soldiers began to spread out, cutting off his path forward. He turned slightly, scanning for a way back, but the jungle behind him was too thick for a fast retreat. One of them stepped into the river, boots breaking the surface with slow, deliberate steps. Ryan's pulse quickened. The girl's nails dug into his arm. The glowing shard in his pocket felt heavier now, almost like it knew what was coming. The soldier raised a hand, a silent signal, and two more moved in to flank him. The tension in the air felt like it could snap at any second. Ryan's mind raced, knowing that if he made the wrong move, neither of them would leave this river alive. The soldier in the river lunged first, splashing forward with his weapon raised. Ryan reacted without thinking, swinging the rifle up and firing a short burst into the water at the man's feet. The spray exploded upward, forcing the soldier to stumble back. Before the others could react, Ryan turned sharply and waded downstream, the current pulling at his legs, the girl holding on as if her life depended on it. Arcs of blue energy hissed past them, splintering the water where they had been. Ryan kept moving, weaving between half-submerged rocks until the river narrowed and dropped into a steep cascade. Without hesitating, he pulled the girl tight against him and leaped. The world spun in a blur of white foam and cold impact. They surfaced far below, coughing and gasping, the current carrying them fast. Ryan grabbed a jutting root along the bank and hauled them both out. The girl's chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath. He scanned the trees around them, but for the moment, there were no signs of pursuit. When she finally spoke, her voice was broken but urgent. "They want crystal. Open gate. Burn all worlds." Ryan stared at her, the meaning of her words sinking in like a stone in deep water. The shard in his pocket wasn't just a strange relic, it was a key, and whatever it unlocked was dangerous enough for two different factions. To risk everything. She touched her chest, then his, and shook her head. No give. Her eyes were fierce now, the fear replaced with something harder, determination. Ryan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of what he had just stepped into. The distant echo of a horn cut through the jungle. The girl's head snapped toward the sound. Ryan adjusted his grip on the rifle and motioned for her to move. Their run through the night had been about survival, but now, he realized, it was also about stopping something far bigger than either of them. By nightfall, the jungle had turned into a wall of black, the air heavy with the smell of damp leaves and smoke from distant fires. Ryan found the ruins of an old outpost half swallowed by vines, its walls cracked, roof sagging under years of rot, but it was shelter. He led the girl inside, sweeping the corners with his rifle. Before lowering it, she moved toward a broken console in the center of the room, her fingers brushing away the dust. Faint light flickered to life as she pressed something. The hum of old power cells filled the air. Ryan realized she was trying to activate a transmitter, its rusted antenna jutting out through a hole in the roof like a crooked spear. Outside, movement stirred, the soft snap of a branch under a boot. Ryan signaled her to keep working and slipped to the doorway. Shapes emerged from the dark, the tribal hunters, their painted bodies ghostly in the moonlight. And behind them, the armored soldiers, the two groups moving together now, united by the same goal. The girl's voice called softly from inside. "Ready? But once send, they come." Ryan glanced back at her, then out at the figures circling the outpost. There would be no escape if they broke through. The first warrior stepped into the doorway. Ryan fired, the crack echoing through the trees. Chaos erupted, spears clattering against metal armor, energy blasts tearing into the walls. The girl ducked behind the console, sending the signal. Ryan fought at the entrance, the recoil thudding into his shoulder again and again. A tall figure appeared, the tribal leader from the fire, his spear now tipped with glowing metal. He stepped forward through the chaos. Locking eyes with the girl, she shouted something in her language, her voice sharp and commanding. The leader froze, his grip on the spear tightening. For a long moment, no one moved, the jungle silent except for the hum of the transmitter. Then, slowly, the leader lowered his weapon and stepped back. The hunters followed, melting into the shadows. The armored soldiers hesitated, then turned away. Ryan stood there, breathing hard. The girl rose from behind the console, her expression unreadable. She stepped toward him, and, for the first time since he'd seen her above the flames, she smiled. "You, my hero," she whispered, and somewhere, far above, the old antenna blinked a final pulse into the night, carrying their message to whoever was listening.